You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's March the 25th, and welcome to Psychedelics Cannabis Educational News here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. Good morning, Green Irene. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Hal. I've got one of those crispy voices from the event that we just attended. So we a lot of talking over the weekend. I don't know. Sorry about the voice. Maybe it's not.
I completely understand. I'm feeling the same as you. And Gail commented last night when I got home saying, "Boy, has your voice ever gone hoarse?" And yeah, a lot of time. Spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people at the Can Expo, at the Intercare Center throughout the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So, busy time. That was for sure.
It certainly was.
So, alrighty. What do you say? Time to get on with the news?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
All right. First story of the day. First headline from StratCan. Organigram receives final ruling from Health Canada. Jolts are inedible.
Interesting. Organigram says it has received a final ruling from Health Canada, again concluding that its Edison Jolts lozenges are inedible, not an extract. The New Brunswick cannabis producer made the announcement near the end of the day on Friday, March 22nd.
Organigram launched Edison Jolts in 2021 as the first of a wave of similar products to hit shelves in the following year. The products offer consumers more than 10 milligrams THC limit per package allowed under Health Canada's rules for edibles, arguing that they were classified as extracts and therefore not subject to the same THC limits. But early 2023, Health Canada began telling producers they could no longer sell these products. And in March of that year, several other companies confirmed with StratCan that they would also pause production, with Health Canada giving them until May the 31st, 2023, to cease selling and distributing those products.
Organigram filed for judicial review of that decision in March of 2023, and in August, a judge approved Organigram's application. The review was related to the process Health Canada took to arrive at their decision. The case was then sent back to the regulator for the opportunity to respond. Organigram temporarily ceased selling Jolts for several months in 2023, but began selling them again in October following the approval of the application for review by a judge.
Following that announcement, Organigram in November, Health Canada said it was in the redetermination process regarding its initial ruling on the Jolts. Health Canada has always maintained that it considers that any product intended to be consumed in the same manner as food is not an extract.
The agency sent out a memo to license holders in December of 2023, again reiterating this point, noting that the classification of a cannabis product does not mean that the product is compliant with all regulations pertaining to that class of cannabis. License holders are responsible for making sure their cannabis products meet all the applicable requirements of the Cannabis Act and cannabis regulations. This new announcement from Organigram is the most recent evolution of the ongoing issue. The company says it has stopped the production of Jolts in their current format and is currently working with Health Canada on timing to sell through the remaining inventory to the provincial distributors.
Now, we are disappointed with the outcome of Health Canada's further review of our Jolts products, says Bina Goldensberg, who's the CEO of Organigram. They say, our patent Jolts lozenge was launched over 2 years ago following significant research and development and was specifically designed to appeal to consumers looking to access regulated and tested ingestible products from the legal market that met their needs for potency and price. We are currently assessing our options to continue to meet the needs of consumers while retaining within the legal market. So, capsules or something that you ingest. That
No, they're a lozenge. So just like you would, a candy while at the expo,
No, I know.
you just suck
Yeah,
on
that's
it.
what.
The thing
Yeah,
is, they're proposing that it's a lot more like a concentrate, because by sucking on the lozenge, you are accessing the primary ventricle system to the heart. So the stuff does go immediately into the brain, unlike it, and it's something that you would chew up and eat that goes through the digestive system. So it really is that in between. It's a candy if you chomped it up and chewed it and swallowed it. But if you sat there and sucked on it, it acts as a tincture. So what is it?
well, yeah. See, that's a capsule. They consider a capsule an extract. Capsule has the same milligrammage, and the difference is you're not sucking on it; you're just directly swallowing it.
Right, but that's also being fought for the very same reason.
Oh, I haven't heard that yet.
Ingestibles.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one.
Capsules should be ingestibles. So,
all right, on to the next story we go. This one comes to us from the BBC. Question on the headline says, what psychedelics legalization and decriminalization looks like around the world.
Interesting. Psychedelics see increased legalization and decriminalization globally as treatment usages expand. Research continues to progress on the potential mental and physical health benefits of psychedelics that are used in therapeutic contexts. Yet, psychedelic substances remain illegal around much of the globe, with notable exceptions.
As of 2024, some psychedelics have been given a legal or decriminalization foothold in parts of Central Africa. Where else? As well as South Africa, Australia, the Bahamas, Brazil, British Virgin Islands, Canada, the Czech Republic, Costa Rica, Israel, Jamaica, Mexico, Nepal, the Netherlands, Panama, Peru, Portugal, Somalia, Spain, Switzerland, and the United States. Like, who would have thought you'd have a list that long? Already.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is surprising.
Yeah, it is. There's probably just as many or more that are legal on the psychedelics, and then when it comes to the cannabis end of things too. All right, I'm gonna let you take over. I'm gonna go deal with the dog.
Okay. Psychedelics include psilocybin, which can be found in the magic mushroom. MDMA, ecstasy, or Molly is what most people know it as. LSD, or acid, ayahuasca, peyote, and ibogaine, among others. The legal landscape of these substances is changing globally amidst continuous emerging research on the various benefits of their therapeutic use. Psychedelics have been shown to help with mental health conditions such as treatment-resistant depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. They're also being studied for the relief of physical health conditions such as those related to chronic pain. Very interesting research. Psychedelics are not only very effective at treating a wide range of indications that currently lack treatment options, but are also proving, when used responsibly, very safe, says Grace Blest-Hopley, who is a neuroscientist and psychedelic researcher affiliated with King's College in London in the UK.
In some countries, various psychedelics have full legalization. In other countries, certain psychedelics have been legalized only under specific contents. And still in other areas, some psychedelics have been decriminalized. Decriminalization can mean different things. Generally, it implies that people can possess or use a personal amount of the substance despite it being illegal, although sometimes minor fines apply. It literally means that they're not going to put resources behind arresting and prosecuting people, says Mason Marks, a visiting professor at the Harvard Law School and the senior fellow and lead of school's project on psychedelics law and regulation.
Yes, Mark says that criminalization of drugs, including psychedelics, creates more harm than good. What happens when you criminalize something is that people don't want to talk about it with their doctors, he says. People can't talk amongst themselves. It's quite plausible that when something is criminalized, people might hesitate to call for emergency medical services. Blessed Hopely agrees. I believe that legalization of all drugs, she says, allows for the removal of criminal activity from the supply chain and adults to make decisions on what they put in their bodies. That is also true for attaining products that are assured for quality.
But she adds a note of caution. Psychedelics are extremely powerful substances, she says, and any change in legislation towards better access I would welcome greatly. However, it must come with education around psychedelics and their totality, not just the positives, but also the risks, the effects, and the enormity of impact that using large doses of substance can have accurately and long term. Arguments against legalization and decriminalization include concerns over any potential increase in substance use disorders. However, psychedelics are currently being studied as a potential treatment for substance use disorder and not considering addicting themselves. Other concerns include potential increases in psychedelic-related emergencies, such as emergency department visits for bad trips. However, emergency department visits tend to be rare for LSD and psilocybin, though more common for MDMA.
Yes. Now, a closer look at the status of psychedelics around the globe, including the ever-changing landscapes of legalization, decriminalization, and drug review agency approvals. Are psychedelics legal in the United Kingdom? These substances are still very much controlled in the UK, says Blessed Hopely, who is the founder of Hystelica, a UK-based community of researchers aimed at investigating psychedelics and their effects on female biology.
Psychedelics, like LSD and psilocybin, are both still Schedule 1, defined as having no therapeutic benefit and requiring a license from the Home Office, basically the government, plus considerable security and cost implications to conduct research, she says. Advocacy groups are pushing for change in the UK. There have been movements within government lobbying groups to allow access to psilocybin for therapeutic relief in end-of-life cancer patients and military veterans, Blessed Hopely adds. Sadly, all discussions brought to the parliamentary chamber and the government have been swiftly done away with, stating no plans of the government to review or change the status.
Right. Now, in Central Africa, as in Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and the Republic of Congo, ibogaine, which is being studied for opiate use disorder and PTSD, comes from the sacred plant iboga plant. It is native to Central Africa, where it is used by the indigenous communities for ceremonial purposes in Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and the Republic of Congo. In these areas, ibogaine generally lacks as a legal framework regulating it. It is, however, legal in Gabon, where it is protected.
South Africa. There, ibogaine is considered a medication and can be provided by licensed professionals. In Australia, in 2023, Australia's Therapeutic Goods Administration, the agency responsible for regulating medicines, decided to allow authorized psychiatrists to prescribe some psychedelics for certain mental health conditions. The TGA permits the prescribing of MDMA for PTSD and psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. Ibogaine can also be prescribed to treat addiction in Australia. The decision acknowledges a current lack of options for patients with specific treatment-resistant mental illnesses, the TGA wrote in a press release.
Right. In the Bahamas, psilocybin is legal to possess and use, but not to sell. The British Virgin Isles, psilocybin is also legal to possess and use, but not to sell. In Peru, ayahuasca is legal, which in 2008 designated the psychedelic a part of the indigenous heritage.
In Mexico, psychedelics are generally considered illegal. However, there is an exception that can be made. The country has made the country a hotspot for psychedelic retreats. Article 195 BIS of the Federal Penal Code states that people cannot be prosecuted for spiritual or ceremonial use of psilocybin or DMT. The latter is secreted by a gland or secreted by a gland in a toad and is found in some plants. Ibogaine is unregulated in Mexico, making the country a place where people seek treatment. Peyote is legal in Mexico only for indigenous ceremonies and traditions.
Interesting. In Costa Rica, though not legal, personal drug use is not prosecuted. And ibogaine is unregulated in Panama. Psychedelics in the European Union, however, classify psychedelics as Schedule 1, meaning they are highly controlled and illegal except for scientific or limited medical purposes. The European Medicines Agency, the agency's Central Nervous System Working Party, and the representatives from the European College of Neuropharmacology recently issued commentary in the journal Lancet.
The authors acknowledge the mental health issues affect 1 in 6 people in the EU. There is need for effective, safe new treatments for mental disorders, the commentary says, and in the past decade there has been a renewed interest worldwide in psychedelics as potential treatments for various mental health conditions. In the Czech Republic, despite the illegality of psychedelics across the EU, some countries within Europe have moved to either legalize or decriminalize certain substances. The Czech Republic, for example, decriminalized personal possession of small amounts of psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, and peyote.
Right. Now in the Netherlands, psilocybin truffles are legal, though other forms of the compound are not. And ibogaine is unregulated in the country. Other psychedelics still remain illegal. In Germany, ibogaine is unregulated except for pharmaceutical rules under the German Medicinal Products Act. The country does have several ibogaine treatment centers.
In Portugal, at the start of the 21st century, decriminalized personal possession and use of all drugs. Spain has also decriminalized drug use. Yeah, and a lot of people look at the Portugal example as a way to do things. Switzerland has decriminalized substance use in general. Psychedelics LSD was accidentally synthesized in the country by the chemist Albert Hofmann. Switzerland now allows for restricted, compassionate use in medical contexts of LSD and some other psychedelics. The Federal Office of Public Health must grant permits for such use. The agency says roughly 70 physicians have permits.
Yeah. So what this means that a small number of patients are treated with these substances each year while we await larger studies about safety and efficacy, says Abigail Calder, a psychedelic researcher and doctoral candidate at the University of Freiburg. Switzerland has had the exceptional use program in place off and on since the 80s, Calder adds, and the most recent law has been in effect since 2014. This makes them the first country in the modern era to have legal psychedelic therapy, albeit only on official request, she says. I doubt there are any plans to legalize psychedelic therapy more broadly until there is much more research on the safety and efficacy.
Israel, in 2019, approved a compassionate use program for the therapeutic use of MDMA in people with PTSD and for several other patients. And Jamaica is a popular place for psychedelic tourism, thanks to its lack of a law surrounding psilocybin. Magic mushrooms have never been illegal in the country.
In Nepal, psychedelics such as psilocybin are not explicitly mentioned in the country's Narcotic Drugs Control Act of 2033. The UC Berkeley Center for Psychedelic Sciences reports that psilocybin is legal in the country. Here in Canada and the U.S., things have been slowly expanding access to psychedelic substances. In Canada, most psychedelics are illegal based on their classifications under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, with few exceptions.
The psychedelic compound DMT is legal for personal use and possession in Canada.
So that 5-MeO is very important because that makes the DMT plant-based.
Okay, does it? Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I'm trying to shorten it all.
Yeah, DMT is available in a multitude of different ways.
Yeah.
and one is plant-based. So the 5-MeO DMT is an important classification.
Yeah, especially when people look at it as like myself. I'm always thinking something to do with toad. So it's good to know plant-based. So and they say although mescaline is listed as a Schedule 3 controlled substance, peyote is not. Mescaline is extracted from peyote. In 2022, Health Canada, the government's department responsible for health policy, added a special amendment to its Special Access Program called SAP. The amendment allows physicians to request access to psilocybin, MDMA, DMT, LSD, and other psychedelics.
Yes. And just to correct there, that you may be right. The 5-MeO may identify it as frog or plant. I'm not really sure, but I know that that's an important factor. Like it's important to say the whole.
Yeah. Because I see down below
what type of DMT it is, right?
Yeah, because you can see in the list at the end of that sentence, it just lists DMT. It doesn't say 5-MeO.
Correct. Yes. I mean, this is, the more I learn, there is to learn.
Right. Yeah.
And this is one of those arenas. I love that research is opening up, and and even in the countries where these substances are still illegal in some capacity, in most of it they're not for research purposes. So I think that's very interesting. It's a very interesting social thing. So the SAP is only available for certain serious medical conditions. It's meant for emergency basis only, and patients cannot possess the substance, but must be administered by the doctor or psychotherapist. It's not meant for long-term access, says Harrison Jordan, the founder of Substance Law, a firm focusing on regulatory compliance regarding psychedelics and other controlled substances.
Health Canada added ibogaine to its prescription drug list in 2017, but the agency does not recognize its medical use. Therefore, SAP requests are unlikely to be granted, and there's lots of people that can say, yep, they haven't been granted, because there's been lots of people who've been applied and have been turned down, and you hear about it in the news every once in a while. So the Canadian province of British Columbia has decriminalized small amounts of illicit drugs in Alberta in early 2023, implemented a framework for regulating and licensing some healthcare providers to administer some psychedelics for mental health treatment.
In the U.S., psychedelics are considered illegal under Controlled Substances Act. However, Native American ceremonial use of peyote is protected under federal regulation and in at least 28 states. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, however, granted breakthrough therapy designation for MDMA for PTSD in 2017. In 2018, the agency first granted the same designation for psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. These designations helped allow psychedelic research to progress.
In 2024, the FDA is considering MDMA for therapeutic use in conjunction with psychological intervention in people with PTSD. Now the agency has accepted an application from Lykos Therapeutics. In addition to small changes to the federal level, some states and cities have moved to legalize psychedelics for medical purposes or decriminalize them for personal use.
Yeah. Now, the state of Oregon, they decriminalized most drugs in 2020 via Measure 110. However, the governor is set to sign a bill to recriminalize. Republican opposition to Measure 110 grew after a spike in a fatal opiate overdose. Research published in 2023 found that Measure 110 was not associated with the increase in the short term, but longer term research is needed.
A group of business and political leaders in the state called for a ballot measure to repeal or alter the law, and many Democrats who were once in favor of Measure 110 changed their position. Opponents of recriminalization know that Measure 110 was supposed to direct cannabis tax revenue towards addiction services. However, the pandemic hindered the process. If the governor signs a new bill, the state's legislation of psilocybin, or legalization of psilocybin use at licensed psilocybin service centers will remain in effect.
Interesting. Now the
There
state
you
of
go.
Now, the state of Colorado decriminalized the possession and use of small amounts of natural psychedelic substances for those 21 and over. And the state also legalized, due to start in late 2024, the supervised use of psilocybin at licensed facilities or with licensed clinical facilitators. In 2026, the state may start legalizing additional plant-based psychedelic substances such as the DMT, ibogaine, or mescaline in the same context. Now, that being said, Al, when it's just DMT like this, I think that might be the version that is processed, and the 5-MeO might be the natural from, or the DMT by itself may be the plant-based DMT, and then the other one is 5-MeO is from the frogs.
We'll have to find out. We'll have to look into that, so we'll know coming down the road.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, the state of Colorado. Oh, you already did that. Okay. A growing list of cities across the U.S. have made changes to their laws around psychedelics. Decriminalization has been a very popular approach at the local level. There are about 24 cities across the country that have decriminalized to one extent or another. The list includes Washington, D.C., which is in 2020 decriminalized the personal use of psilocybin. So far, it's only successfully been done through a ballot initiative by voters, Marks adds.
Yeah, so this is, in one exception, the California state legislature passed a bill to decriminalize the personal use and possession of psychedelics, but the executive branch said no. So in Samoa, which is in a region of Oceania, psilocybin is legal. In New Zealand, ibogaine can be legally prescribed. And that is the end of our list.
That is, yeah, that's a long list, and I had no clue that all these countries had all these legalized.
We're looking at it all there.
Yeah.
We have a couple of viewers that are, they're saying the stigma on drugs is just ridiculous. These plant medicines and the experience from them is just, exceptional. It's so, I mean, yeah, we've got to loosen up our attitudes. It's time to drop those archaic attitudes and such.
It's time to make change. All right, talking about change, on to the next story. This one comes to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference, and the headline there says, Japan sets record for arresting young cannabis consumers.
Well, how interesting is this? So notably, on Thursday, when you were getting ready and packing up to come here to get me for the cannabis, I was Glenn and I reported on this 6,000 arrests in Japan. So now we know who it is, because that was my question. I wonder who's getting arrested.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Now we know. Cannabis use by young people is a very serious topic that is worthy of a serious conversation and public policy approach. It's a topic that should be driven by science and logic and not by fear mongering. Absolutely. Unfortunately, Japan appears to be taking the wrong approach, we hear. Japan set a national record last year for arresting more people for cannabis than ever before. The record comes at a time when Japan is revamping its cannabis policies and stepping up cannabis prohibition enforcement.
Last December, Japan's government adopted a measure that expressly prohibited half a dozen synthetic cannabinoids. That measure, adoption, came weeks after Japan approved separate legislation that permitted some cannabis-derived medications to be imported to Japan, but also increased penalties for cannabis consumers. Last year's arrest data involving young consumers setting a record is not a surprise given the heightened focus on enforcement in 2023. Right.
So they're saying it was very biased enforcement. The number of cannabis offenders under the age of 20 increased by 34%. The figure for cannabis cases involving those under the age of 20 had decreased for the first time in 9 years by 2022. By age, the number of suspects sharply increased after 16 and remained high until around 20, so after which it began to decline, interestingly. Japan's
Yeah.
National Police Agency is blaming the lack of awareness surrounding the harmfulness of drugs for the rise in arrests and claiming that drugs are now becoming easier to obtain in Japan. The agency's reported plan going forward is to boost anti-cannabis education in Japan high schools.
If history is any guide, Japan will never be able to wrest its way to zero cannabis use, just as no other country can ever achieve such as an unrealistic goal. Yeah, some amount of young people in every country, including Japan, will experiment with cannabis, and while they shouldn't be encouraged to do so, they also shouldn't have their lives ruined because of it. There you go.
Correct. Now, I don't know what the
Yeah.
population is in Japan, but 1,100 or 1,222 is a rather convenient number, maybe, or maybe that was really hard to get, but you just had to just keep going until you get at least over 1,000.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it seems very
Exactly.
biased to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Agenda
that
driven.
focus just needs to be
Agenda
on that
driven.
age group. Yeah.
Correct. And agenda driven,
Yeah.
But I mean, it is not a country such as Canada where we have a very different set of rights and rules
Yeah.
and regulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Well, I see it's about on the hour.
I see
And
that.
that means it's time for us to take a break. Time to medicate. We'll be right back after our session. You're listening or watching to us. We're live at paceradio.net. See you shortly.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Canatechs about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis educational news. And even this morning, first few stories we've read, Irene and I are both learning something. It just never ends. That's why we've got educational in our title. Right, Irene?
Absolutely. I mean, it's about information, right?
Correct.
Information is power. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm still, I'm recovering from the weekend. So yeah, it's I sucked back a glass of water. I raced to get another half a glass of water. I've got, I did the honey, ginger, garlic, I got the cannabis. I don't know if you're familiar with the angel drops, the CBD drops, and there's a little bit of menthol to it. So it really does help when you have a scratchy throat. I usually use it at the start of winter because of colds and stuff. But so yeah, I'm getting everything natural in there right now. I'm dying. As soon as we're done our show today, the hot wrap is going back on around the neck and to soothe things. So I got the turtleneck on. Oh, and do you like my new jewelry? I never wear these pieces. I always wear my, my calling card. But I got that at Can Expo. Just one visitor. She loved my jewelry. I loved her. So we swapped jewelry. Somebody sent me a private message asking where it came from. That's why I'm sharing. So that's where you'll find more pieces like what I'm wearing today, Brenda. Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to let her know.
All righty. On to our next story. Headline comes from Strachan. Says retail cannabis sales declined again in January after the holiday spike.
Well, this is interesting.
There goes the dog.
They went there after I went to the store.
I'm going to deal with the dog. You keep reading. I'll be right back.
All righty. Retail cannabis sales in January of 2024 dropped to their lowest in nearly a year, according to new figures from Stats Canada. Cannabis sales reached a record high of about $589 million in August of 2023, followed by 3 months of decline to $500 in November, before jumping to about $562 in December. Then in January, retail cannabis sales dropped to $498 million, using seasonally adjusted numbers. Interesting. Retail sales historically decline during the Christmas shopping season, with cannabis being no different.
I wouldn't suspect it would be any different because people are paying off their Christmas bills, right?
Well, yeah, there's the Christmas debts. And I don't know about you, but I have been gifting cannabis people in my family for years now. I give them the 12 strains of Christmas. So I collect 12 strains and I put them in little Christmas balls for them. And I give them each a bud. So it's, the 12 strains of Christmas. And my family members love it. So I give away a lot of weed at Christmas. I use it in my baking. So, yeah, I mean, I think there may be a jump just before the holiday and then the slump after the holiday. But they're saying they adjusted for those statistics.
Retail cannabis sales have increased on a year-over-year basis since legalization. Before the peak in sales in August of 2023, the high water mark for the previous year was $511 million in December of 2022, $414 million in December of 2021, and $318 million in December of 2020. While sales still show increases on an annual basis, the 3-month decline in retail cannabis sales in 2023 was the steepest overall decline since legalization. The decline comes at a time when both the cannabis industry and the broader Canadian economy face challenges with consumer spending in many sectors declining, including food and beverages and beer and wine.
Wow, the number of retail stores across Canada also declined. As of March 2024, there were 3,690, which is up from 3,682 in January, cannabis stores in Canada, excluding provincial online stores.
There's the list, 512 public and private stores in BC. Alberta's got 752. Saskatchewan 185. Manitoba 204. There's look at Ontario. There's 1,778.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What's with Quebec? They don't even have 100 stores yet.
Well, they did. They've dropped from 104 stores down to 98 stores.
So they closed up 6 of their government stores then.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean it's really kind of a bit of a roller coaster ride when you start looking at the macroeconomics of the cannabis sector. It's a very unique study in and of itself.
Yeah, we did a report recently where PEI had the most impaired drivers with cannabis going on. Yeah, look at the number of stores. 4.
Right. So again, it's agenda driven. Some of and I mean, people have to expect that when they're listening to anything or reading anything. With so much information available, there is a lot of misinformation that filters down the pipelines. It's important to look at where the data is coming from and whether or not it's agenda driven. Look at more than one source of data always before formulating an opinion.
On to the next story we go. And this one comes to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference. And it says that majority support for cannabis decriminalisation in Victoria, Australia.
Yes. So a recent survey conducted in Victoria, which is a state in Southeast Australia, found that a majority of participants support modernizing the jurisdiction's cannabis policies to decriminalize personal cannabis possession and use. Currently, medical cannabis is permitted in Victoria in some instances, but recreational cannabis use is prohibited. According to the domestic reporting, the survey involved 1,511 Victorians over the ages of 18 years, and of those surveyed, 54% were in favor of decriminalizing cannabis and creating a regulated market for personal adult use.
In Victoria, cannabis is currently considered a drug of dependence. Offenders who are caught with less than 50 grams of cannabis face a possible fine if it is the first offense, and progressively harsher penalties for next offenses. Of the recent survey participants who did not express support for cannabis reform, only 28.5% indicated that they oppose cannabis policy modernization. A smaller percentage, 17.5%, responded that they were unsure about the policy change proposal.
And that was according to the Canberra Times. The survey conducted by the polling outfit in Redbridge on behalf of public health research and drug policy body, Pennington Institute, shows the highest level of support for regulation over criminalization in an Australian independent third-party poll so far. Pennington Institute CEO John Ryan, who chaired an independent panel review into the North Richmond supervised injecting room, said the community wants change and the state must listen. More and more Victorians reject the criminalization of cannabis and the harms inherent with this approach, he said in a statement on Sunday.
The Australian Capital Territory decriminalized personal cannabis activity in 2020. Currently in the Australian Capital Territory, people 18 and older can possess up to 50 grams of dried cannabis or up to 150 grams of fresh cannabis. Adults can also cultivate up to 2 plants per person with a maximum of 4 plants per household. Cannabis use in a private residence is permitted. However, cannabis cultivation and the consumption are still prohibited in public settings in the Australian Capital Territory. So you can't grow your cannabis in the public parks.
Right.
That's what the last comment there was a bit off. All righty, here we go. On to our next story.
Well, I think what they're also saying is you can't grow it in public places. So in your backyard is not private enough. If you're going to grow it, it has to be grown indoors.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking at it as it can't be visible.
Right.
If it's like, for example, on balconies, like in BC, they've got laws where people can't grow cannabis on your balconies because it's visual. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and one place had a garden show going on, showing all their flowers, and they had some cannabis plants over in a different spot, and a police officer saw them and they got arrested for it. You know?
Sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
All right.
Another decade to clean things up, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You gotta keep advocating and keep fighting to make changes. Just because it's legalized doesn't mean that cannabis law reform ends.
Correct.
All right. Next story. This one comes to us from Muggleheads. American cannabis sales expected to rise by 9% this year.
Interesting. Cannabis consumption in the U.S. continues to rise, and the sales total in the country this year is expected to be over 9% higher than it was in 2023. Now, that's according to Oregon's pot data from Whitney Economics, which estimates that cannabis sales will increase by $2.6 billion year over year in 2024. That's all in US dollars. Now, for a total of $31.4 billion.
And this is in a federally illegal product selling at $31.4 million. Although there are uncertainties in the near-term outlook, demand for legal cannabis in the U.S. will remain strong throughout the decade, with growing coming from newer markets. Founder Bo Whitney says, and he claims that his firm's assessments from last year's were 98.3% accurate. Whitney expects the American sales in 2025 will ascend even more, with a predictable total of $35.2 billion. The firm expects continued growth for the remainder of the decade and beyond, with $87 billion in year sales expected by 2023.
Wow. Our firm provides these updated U.S. numbers as a service to help educate others on key issues in the cannabis industry, Whitney added. He went on to talk about rescheduling potentially is on the horizon. Whitney's published over 20 white papers on cannabis since it was founded in 2014. One of the firm's most recent reports from October found that the American cannabinoid industry supports employment of over 328,000 workers. Again, this is in a country where it's illegal on a federal level.
Correct. I know. Overall, the total economic impact of the hemp-derived cannabinoid industry on the U.S. economy is in excess of $79 billion, the report says. Now, the American Vice President, Kamala Harris, recently stated that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency was working as quickly as possible to reschedule cannabis from its current status as a Schedule I drug.
Yes, if this comes to fruition, cannabis businesses in the states where the plant has been legalized would be able to deduct expenses from their taxes. Whitney has estimated that pot retailers will collectively pay about $2 billion in taxes next spring due to the plant's current federal status. Now, cannabis is considered as dangerous as heroin and more dangerous than fentanyl, which is absurd, says Harris.
Yes. Yeah, they got to make some changes down there, and who knows? Let's hope it goes beyond the Schedule III. Let's just legalize it. Like, it's just, I'd hate to live there because it's frustrating from Canada and watching what's going on down there and it not happening. It just doesn't make sense, especially with numbers like that, because that's a whole new income stream for the federal government, as we see here with our government, right?
Exactly. So, yeah. All
right. This next story I found very, very interesting. This is from the Daily Beast. Cops demand the right for cops to do psychedelic drugs. I've just never seen that before. Cops. I've seen cops with the end of the cannabis end of things, but just not on the psychedelic thing end of it all.
But it only stands to reason that they would be.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a very high stress level job.
Sure.
So, Sarko Gregorian, a Massachusetts police lieutenant, is not your average cop. He's also a trained MDMA assisted therapist. His police chief even gave him permission to take a trip with the medicine, also known as ecstasy or Molly, during a clinical trial. It opened my heart and mind, he told the Daily Beast.
For decades in the U.S., police officers have served as the frontline troops in a militarized war on drugs in which millions were jailed for non-violent offenses. But a small cadre of serving and former police officers in the U.S. and across the world are like Gergen, finding that when used responsibly and therapeutically, some of the drugs can ease distress and make them happier. On the sidelines of the United Nations Annual Commission on Narcotic Drugs in Vienna on Wednesday, Gergen sat beside three former senior policemen as part of the panel organized by Law Enforcement Action Partnership LEAP, titled "Why Police Need Access to Psychedelics Urgently." They presented authorities around the world to swiftly make, or they pressed authorities swiftly around the world to make MDMA-assisted therapy available at to their comrades, both as a preventative medicine and treatment of PTSD, which is rampant and may affect as many as 1 in 2 officers. The scale of the mental health crisis in policing means that in the US and the UK, officers are more likely to commit suicide than die on duty.
Yes, I was recently reading those studies and the research. It's just and in relation to using psychedelics, it's very and so let's carry on with the story. MDMA can push treatment-resistant PTSD into remission, says Gregorian, who had a postgraduate qualification in mental health counseling before joining the police force in 2010. Initially as a patrol officer and is speaking in a personal capacity. Why not create a wellness program for first responders with MDMA AT? Built in so that cops don't get to the point where they're blowing their own heads off with their own guns. The origin of Gregorian's training is a story for the ages. He attended a police chiefs conference in Florida in 2018 where the psychedelic healing advocate, Rick Doblin, the founder of Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, presented clinical data on the effectiveness of the empathogenic stimulant. I was already a trained psychotherapist, and I asked him, how can I help with this? Well, Gregorian recalls he answered, become a psychedelic-assisted therapist, and then he gave me his card. Gregorian duly underwent MAPS, which is 100-hour training program, and made an appearance in the Netflix psychedelic series, How to Change Your Mind.
Now, Gregorian, the psychedelic healing lieutenant, is perhaps the most high-profile advocate among serving police officers for psychedelic therapy. Already, he has held space for veterans and retired police undergoing ketamine trips, and he stands ready to facilitate MDMA sessions for his fellow officers if the Food and Drug Administration approves the therapy for the stress disorder in August, as expected. It seems far out, but with the U.S. Veteran Affairs Department already funding a pilot scheme providing ketamine-assisted therapy to former soldiers, perhaps police officers will soon be able to access the love drug as part of their health insurance schemes.
Well, Gregorian even thinks psychedelic therapy can help to heal the crisis in policing, where accusations of racial bias and fatal shootings have led to the defunding of the police movement. Psychedelic-assisted therapies are the antidote to highly contagious infections like hate, he says. They will help create space so we can carefully move towards one another, listen, accept, and extend a hand in service to each other for the sake of our entire planet. Oh, I don't know. Remember, go back to when cops were cops? Sorry, Mayberry just pumped into my head.
Yeah.
Neil Woods, a board member of LEAP and a UK former undercover detective who co-wrote the bestseller Good Cop, Bad War, also thinks that it may be better to heal police officers and society at large than it is to defund the police. The UN needs to start removing the barriers to psychedelic research and legalization, says Woods, who organized the panel. Nation states need to stand up and innovate for the sake of their cops, too. The evidence is here. People are dying, and we need to do something about it. We want psychedelic therapy ingrained to protect the mental health of police as well as everyone else.
Woods knows several police officers who have undergone psychedelic therapy. One was a detective sergeant at the time who drank ayahuasca as a visionary psychedelic brew from the Amazon and rescued his mental health and his marriage. He also became a better, kinder police officer, Woods says. Another is PC Paul Haylock, a serving officer of 22 years, who recently told of how his experience with ayahuasca in Peru, psychedelics, turned his life around and helped him process trauma occurred from countless harrowing incidents and scant police aftercare. Serving officers in Canada have similar stories. It's no wonder so many cops are seeking their own solutions. Police officers who were exposed to trauma in the war on drugs now report that the effort did not limit access to drugs, but increased violence. Now they are fighting for psychedelics in the treatment of trauma and other psychological challenges. Aldred Knutsen, the head of Norway's Association for Human Drug Policies, who attended the panel.
Yes. LEAP's mental health and policing campaign comes as the severe lack of psychological and emotional support in forces around the world is driving an unprecedented exodus, where record numbers across England and Wales and the US are quitting. Others, like Fabien Bilherian, who is a retired French detective, spent 8 years in the Paris Narcotics Brigade and was an ardent believer in the drug war when he began his policing career, have dawning realizations that they are part of the problem. He says this disillusionment, and the reaction to his attempts to raise awareness of the suffering resulting from the drug war led him to attempt suicide in 2020.
I was a financial enforcer of the drug wars.
Fanatical.
Yeah. Fanatical. Yeah, my screen goes, I'm jumping all over the place here. But when I realized that police violence made a drug trafficking increase rather than go down, it was really bad for my mental health. He says he was about to shoot himself while sitting in an impoundment car in the police station. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, the car alarm went off. The car alarm saved my life. Bellerin, who has also shared his story during the panel discussion, told the Daily Beast it was like a wake-up call. After that, he sought help outside of the police and received treatment for PTSD. But the sedating benzos drugs he was prescribed just made him slow and sleepy. He soon discovered that people were recommending other tools for fighting PTSD, and he did therapeutic work with psychedelic mushrooms, LSD, and 5-MeO-DMT. I felt that all the people around me were connected, he recalls. Bellerin says that his experiences with MDMA made it possible to co-writing a book, The Law of Silence, published in 2022, which highlights the issues he sees in the police force. It helps me speak freely more easily and put words to my suffering, he says.
Yes, Bilherian went to Mexico for some of his psychedelic experiences, but increasingly illegal psychedelic therapy is available under the radar and in some cases above board in the US and across Europe. Some underground psychedelic facilitators are ex-police officers and veterans. Luc Van Polge, a former soldier who served in Iraq in 1991 and began facilitating mushroom truffle journeys in Holland after transformative 2013 ayahuasca ayahuasca and mushroom trips. He has served psilocybin to around 30 serving police officers from his own country, Germany, the UK, and the US. Everyone is looking for healing, insights, and inner peace, he says. It's about remembering you are a part of a magical universe and you belong here, that you are loved. Police officers are often spat at, literally and figuratively, and that's a lot to deal with.
Ben Broughton, a cop for a decade in the UK, was proud of his work in the police. He rose to the rank of sergeant, arresting countless people for drug offences before going to work for the UK's Financial Conduct Authority. But he says magic mushroom ceremony changed his life and transformed his perspective of himself, his work, and his attitude towards drugs, so much so that he soon set about to train with a plant medicine shaman to become a medicine man himself. Fast forward 5 years, and he's holding his own ceremonies.
Yep, doctors, lawyers, and people from all sorts of professions attend, including 2 serving police officers. They are both trying to change the police force from within the system, says Broughton. They've decided to focus on their own personal issues in ceremony and become more conscious police officers. If we can have a more conscious police service, that could be one hell of a change. One of the officers is actively campaigning for drug law reform as well. We should have done things differently, but I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't been through those experiences, says Broughton, alluding to the fact that he, like Bill Arion and Woods, arrested countless people for drug crimes during his time in the force. That was me once upon a time, he says, but I've changed, and mostly due to the medicine, and this is who I am now.
All right, that's good. I'm going to cut things off as I look over at the time there on the clock. But, sharing one's stories, as these guys are sharing the stories of these officers and how their work impacted them and how they've got a benefit from these psychedelic drugs, are excellent ways in order to educate and teach other people.
Well, how often have you been trained in genuine, especially nowadays, and people can say this about cannabis, our attitude, we were educated one way, we were conditioned to believe, and then all of a sudden this research, everything changes, and it's like, holy shit, and you've got all this guilt, or, why the fuck, I did that because that's what I believed. But guess what? We're human, and we're allowed to grow and change, and it's great. One of my instructors says there is no failure. It's data. Use that data to improve the system. It's not failure.
It's not only just from arresting people, it's also from what they experienced during those arrests, whether they're being shot at or, involved in some type of, not everybody just says, oh, okay, come and arrest me. There's usually a bit of a tug of war going on, battle. Some of them might have experienced some really negative things. So I agree.
Exactly.
And
they're humans. They're humans.
They're humans. That's right. Exactly. Peace. Anything before peace. That's right. Okay, from the legacy420.com news desk, that's our Pace News Report for March the 25th. Thanks to our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, legacy420.com, as well as Limestone City Hydroponics. Tune into our next show on Thursday with Glenn and I. And until then, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate. See you then. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.